You know, after watching this documentary, I was really left with one glaring question. What does love got to do with it?
We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
Hey, what is up, you guys? This is Steffi, aka In My Humble Opinion, and welcome back to another IMHO Film Club movie review. In today's video, I am so excited to talk about HBO's newest documentary about one of the most legendary, iconic divas of all time, and that documentary is entitled Tina. So Tina is a documentary about the life and career of Anna Mae Bullock. You guys may know her as, Tina Turner, as told by Tina Turner herself both in present day and from previously recorded interviews over the years. This documentary features interviews from people like Oprah, Angela Bassett, who of course played Tina Turner in What's Love Got to Do with It, Kurt Loder, who was her co-writer for I, Tina, Katori Hall, who was involved in writing the book for the Tina Turner musical, Roger Davies, her former manager, her husband Erwin Bach, and various former backup singers and dancers. And this movie was directed by Dan Lindsay and TJ Martin, done with the approval and support of Tina Turner. So before I get into this review, I just want to say thank you so much to my friends over at HBO and Cinetic Media for sending me an advanced screener of this documentary. I'm honestly shook, surprised that I was able to get this. I just, I shooted my shot, as the kids say, and I scored. Yeah, thank you guys so much for sending me an advanced screener, and honestly, I think a huge reason why I was able to get an advanced screener for this particular documentary is because I told them that I have a Diva podcast. So this is normally something that I plug at the end of my videos, but I'm gonna put it right at the front because I feel like if you like this documentary, if you like Tina Turner, you're probably a fan of other divas as well. And in that case, boy, do I have a podcast for you. So I host a podcast called Diva Dailies. It's a podcast where we deconstruct divas on film, TV, and in music, and we just discuss and celebrate all the divas. So I just feel like if you're a fan of Tina Turner, if you like the movie What's Love Got to Do with It, which we're gonna cover at some point in the podcast, you should definitely give my podcast a listen. Again, we're called Diva Dailies wherever you listen to podcasts. But yeah, so in today's video, as in all my movie reviews, I'm gonna be talking about the pros, the cons, and then I'm gonna give my overall rating review on this movie. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about the pros. So my first pro to Tina is the use of archival footage. So this documentary in particular is a great masterclass in show, not tell. You know how normally when you watch a lot of documentaries, a good chunk of the documentary is you watching talking heads. It's you watching people getting interviewed and watching these people talk about a particular subject. And every now and then, yeah, they'll cut to maybe some candid footage, some photographs, and what have you. But if we were to make a pie chart of what that documentary consisted of, a good chunk of it would just be talking heads. Well, in Tina, obviously, yes, you do have talking heads. Going back to our pie chart analogy here, a good chunk of this documentary is really comprised of archival footage. And for me, I really appreciate this because it's one thing to talk about what a great performer Tina is, or to talk about the different relationship dynamics that Tina Turner had in her life, but it's another thing when you actually watch the footage of Tina Turner performing on stage, or you see the subtle interactions she would have with Ike Turner, be it in interviews or in photographs. Tina fans, I'm not quite sure if any of this footage has been seen before, but I'm imagining since Tina was an artist from an older era, an older generation, perhaps the footage that you do have isn't of the best quality. So even if you have seen some of this footage before, I still feel like you'll be pleased because it is in really good quality. My second pro to this movie is that this is Tina in her own words, and it's done in twofold. One, in present day, you see Tina Turner in 2019 in Zurich, Switzerland, wearing her crisp black pantsuit as pictured here. Do you see Tina Turner in her crisp black suit? Yes. roles. But then you also have past Tina Turner. And this is specifically Tina in the form of herself via a cassette tape recording from an interview that she did in 1981 with People magazine. And this interview in particular was a monumental moment in Tina Turner's career and life because this was the first time she ever went public with a major outlet about her marriage, about her trauma with Ike. And honestly, for me, the fact that they have this 1981 interview is a huge strength of the film because when you're listening to the tape recording, you can hear the emotion in Tina Turner's voice because you have to think, if that interview is from 1981, the relationship and the trauma is still somewhat fresh. So it's very like, I don't know, it's very intense listening to her talk about it in that context. So again, I think having Tina Turner at two different points in her life talk about her life and career is really special. And that's something that not a lot of people, let alone Black female artists of that particular era, get the chance to do, which is the chance to essentially have agency and ownership in their own story and in how that story is told. Alright, my third pro to this movie, and it's a huge pro, and that is the theme and takeaway of this documentary. And to me, that is the power and cost of owning your own story. So kind of continuing with my previous point, I think it's so great that Tina Turner gets the chance to tell her own story in this way. And I genuinely wish every diva got the chance to do this. You know, a couple days ago, I did a review on the Genius Aretha show, and in a couple months, the Jennifer Hudson biopic about Aretha Franklin is going to be coming out as well. But you know what? It would have been great for Aretha Franklin to have done a proper documentary that she was heavily involved in, talking about her life and career. I make it really known on the internet that my favorite diva of all time is Whitney Houston, and there have been so many documentaries about Whitney over the years, ever since she died. But you know what? It would have been great if Whitney just sat down and did a proper documentary about her life and her career. And even more recently too, just thinking about the Free Britney movement and how a documentary was made about Britney Spears, it'd be great if one day Britney were to actually make a documentary about herself. But I think, you know, now with the more current girls like Taylor Swift and Beyonce and even Billie Eilish and now more recently Demi Lovato, you're seeing a lot of these younger female artists start taking control of their narrative, largely in part because they have access to do that with the internet and social media. But I think Tina Turner in the pantheon of divas is a really interesting case study because she is someone who, despite coming from an older era, she's actually been able to tell her own story threefold. The first time was with her autobiography, I, Tina, that she co-wrote with Kurt Loder, who appears in the documentary. The second time was with, of course, the movie biopic, What's Love Got to Do With It, with Angela Bassett. And for me, personally, I believe like that Tina Turner biopic is the standard of music biopics. And then the third time is more recently with Tina, the Tina Turner musical. And now I guess we could even say a fourth time with this documentary. But I think what the documentary interestingly explores is, while there is great power in being able to own your story, for a lot of us, we don't stop to think about the toll it takes on that person. There is an emotional cost when you share your story. And the impression that I get after watching this documentary is that every time Tina would go about sharing her story, I think Tina thought that's all she needed to do was just put it out there once and that would be it, no questions asked. But the thing about telling your story is that once you share it with other people, it's no longer just yours, it's the world's. And the thing with Tina's story is because there is that element of having experienced a toxic marriage and being in an abusive relationship, and the fact that she was able to get out, a lot of people find that inspiring. And it resonates with a lot of people, especially those who have been in similar situations. And I think one of the best quotes from this documentary, there's a couple of good quotes in this documentary, but I think one of the best quotes in this documentary actually comes from Angela Bassett. And she says, "It's hard to wrap your mind around when the worst parts of your life has been an inspiration." And when it comes to Tina Turner, the more she gets asked about this particular aspect of her life, the more she's consistently forced in a position where she has to relive her trauma. And I think that's a really interesting idea for the documentary to engage in, especially since we are living in an era of the internet, of social media, and a lot of us are sharing our stories and ourselves online. So in that sense, I feel like this particular aspect of the documentary is kind of like an epilogue to What's Love Got to Do with It. It's like what happens after you share your story. My fourth pro to this documentary is the story of how Tina left Ike. So, of course, Tina Turner has to get into how she left Ike, and just, man, hearing both 2019 Tina Turner and 1981 Tina Turner via that tape recording literally tell the story beat by beat of how she exactly left Ike is still emotional, enthralling, and intense. And especially with the way that they edited that story in this documentary, you're just like, man, I feel like I'm running across the freeway with Tina. And I understand why that story was made into a movie. Okay, and then my fifth pro to this movie is I loved the way they talked about her comeback. And, you know, a little asterisk there, because Tina Turner in the documentary, she doesn't consider like her private dancer era her comeback. She considers it more of her debut, because that was the first time really that she debuted as a solo artist. But when they discuss this era of her life, of her career, the documentary does a great job with building up to this point, because you really feel like this is such an earned high point in the movie. And specifically too, when talking about her debut era, her comeback era, they really let you know that the cards were fully stacked against Tina Turner to succeed, because not only was she a Black female artist, but she was also an artist who by that point was in her 40s, which just exposes how racist and sexist and ageist the music industry and the entertainment industry at large has always been. But yeah, this part of the documentary is honestly my favorite part of the movie, because you're just like, wow, she's doing it, yes! Alright, so now let's talk about some of the cons. So my first con to this documentary is that for me, I wish there was more music. During the comeback debut segment of the documentary, there's a great part where they talk about the creative process behind What's Love Got to Do with It, and they like show her in the recording studio, and it's like pretty cool. And I wish they had done more of that in this documentary, but I understand that this is really a documentary that focuses more so on the life versus the music. You know, you can only fit so much in 2 hours, and I just feel like when it came to this movie, they sacrificed the music in lieu of talking more about her life. My second con to this documentary is that there are topics that are notably left out. So for me, I like Tina Turner, but I'm not gonna say like I'm a huge stan. Like, I don't know every aspect of her life, but I am aware of some of the more recent stuff that has happened in her personal life. And because Tina Turner is heavily involved in this documentary, she has control of what she wants to share. And there have been things that have happened in the more recent years of her life that she just does not get into at all in this documentary, which I completely understand. Like, those are very sensitive issues. I could only imagine it must be really hard for someone to talk about those things. Again, we don't want to force her in a position where she has to consistently relive her trauma, but I think some people going into this documentary, they might expect for her to talk about those things that have happened, or at least mention it, but she really doesn't talk about it. I'm trying to say it because at the time of me releasing this video, it's before the actual documentary comes out, so I don't want to spoil exactly what she doesn't get into, but I think some general people, even maybe some fans, might be a little disappointed that she doesn't talk about those topics. Alright, so my overall rating for Tina is a solid A. Tina definitely feels like an authorized documentary, but perhaps that doesn't have to be a bad thing. While some might be surprised or disappointed that she doesn't talk about certain things, I think it's equally important to note what she does open up about. Tina Turner's story is one that many feel familiar with because of its multiple iterations, but Tina, as a documentary, asks and explores the meta question of its subject, and to us, the viewers, what is the cost in repeatedly owning and sharing your story with the world? And additionally, what does it mean when that story publicly symbolizes triumph and privately represents pain? I'm sure Tina once again will be asked many questions once this documentary airs, but one thing is for certain, and that is, she is simply the best. You like what I did there? Do you like what I did there? But yes, that's basically my review of Tina, the documentary. If you like this video, please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and please turn on the notification button down below so you know when a new video from me comes out. Comment down below, are you excited for Tina? And after maybe you've seen the documentary by the time you're watching this video, like, comment down below like your thoughts on the documentary. Like, what parts were your favorite? Was there something that you wish she talked more about? Also, going to plug 2 more things. My podcast, once again, Diva Dailies, where we deconstruct divas on film, TV, and in music. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like this movie, if you like Tina Turner, I have a feeling you're gonna really like that podcast. Like, this podcast was made for you, so give it a listen. And secondly, too, I want to say, let's vote Tina Turner in to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. When I found out that Tina Turner is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet, I was like, so disgusted. So we need to vote Tina Turner into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We need to vote Dionne Warwick. We need to vote Chaka Khan, and we need to vote Carole King. Those are my 4 girls that I'm like, they need to get in. The 5th slot, I'm always kind of like, okay, maybe I'm gonna vote for the Go-Go's today, maybe Kate Bush today, maybe Mary J. Blige today, but I'm all about putting in a full female ballot for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So, you know, as Janet Jackson said a couple of years ago, induct more women, and as I'm going to say, induct the divas. So I'm gonna leave a link in the description box down below and also in the pinned comment down below where you can go and vote for Tina Turner to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Boom. But yes, that's pretty much the end of this video. I hope you liked it. Please give this video a thumbs up once again because it really does help other people with, you know, the YouTube algorithm find this video and find my channel. I'd really appreciate all of that support. And yeah. Alright, well, as always, everything I said was just my own personal thoughts and all my humble opinion, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!